Continuous monitoring aims to solve a problem. As I mentioned before, if your application and infrastructure are going to fail, and face it, at some point both of them will definitely fail, you'd rather know about it right away. But besides making sure your software is actually still running, there's a long list of other potential problems you'll want to track. So for instance, it's important to understand the quality of the service you deliver over time. Do your users experience website latency? Is your backend database fast enough? More important, is your data accurate enough, or are there access errors or missing records? Perhaps most important of all, are the financial transactions you're performing accurate? Are they ever incorrectly duplicated? Is private information properly protected? And speaking of privacy, are there appropriate security controls in place, and are they active? Are there any unpatched vulnerabilities in your software stack or network infrastructure? Are you even keeping up with the latest patch information? Besides the immediate and hopefully obvious security and operational issues, you should regularly ask yourself if your application is meeting your company's business goals and requirements. This can cover things like service level agreements you signed on to and government or industry compliance standards. If you aren't watching, how can you know if you're on the right track? So those are the problems continuous monitoring comes to solve. Now you're probably wondering about the how. I would organize it into 4 steps: research, selection, implementation, and consumption. Let's take those one at a time. You can't know what needs doing before you've mapped out the lay of the land. You'll need to understand how the application software is supposed to work, what technologies make up your infrastructure stack, what security controls are already in place, and how data is supposed to be collected, shared, and stored. You'll also need a good sense of the business goals and limitations, along with the regulatory and industry environment within which you live. It's unlikely that any one person will just happen to have all that information immediately at hand, so you'll have to gather it through research. Based on that research, you'll be in a better position to figure out which monitoring technologies will work best. Selecting the right solution will, of course, require more research, and probably a whole lot of demoing and trial and error too. Deploying the solution you end up choosing will involve configuring and fine-tuning the monitoring software to fit your needs, including how often the monitoring scans should take place, and then, of course, testing the whole thing to make sure it actually works. Nothing says quality like an alarm system that's not plugged in. And finally, you'll need to figure out what's going to happen to the information your monitoring solution spits out at you. What format should reports use? Who should receive those reports? Is there a process for effectively assessing and handling alerts? That's continuous monitoring. But it's worth at least briefly noting how it all fits into DevOps frameworks. DevOps is about collaboration between a project's development, QA, and IT teams that's designed to facilitate faster time to deployment and software update cycles, and to allow greater levels of process automation. Often, the automation dividends come through the smart implementation of configuration automation tools like Ansible, Jenkins, or Amazon's AWS Code Deploy. Being able to simply plug new or updated code into a kind of virtual assembly line with all the underlying infrastructure and compatibility details invisibly taken care of can certainly speed things up, but it can also greatly improve quality and reduce errors. A very important component of DevOps is incorporating usage feedback and product fixes into the larger development cycle. The more feedback you get and the higher the quality of the feedback, the faster and more focused and effective your updates will be. So imagine if you could move beyond having to wait for end users to complain that something's broken, or for the results of periodic testing to come in. Imagine having smart eyes on your application 24/7. Kinda sounds like continuous monitoring, doesn't it? Of course, continuous monitoring setups aren't limited to the management phase of your DevOps cycles. In fact, there's no reason why you can't also apply some of that continuous monitoring goodness to your code as it moves through the dev and staging steps of the process too. Feel free to learn more about DevOps by taking courses in Pluralsight's DevOps Fundamentals path. Beyond just DevOps, though, continuous monitoring can also pay off big time in your efforts to achieve regulatory and standards compliance. We'll look at that next. Find this useful? Why not follow the link in the description and head over to view the complete course on Pluralsight. And of course, for even more technology goodness, don't forget to subscribe to this channel.